Hello, this is Graham Salinger, founder and president of Salinger Coaching Solutions. We empower success by empowering people. And this is PEP, which stands for Passion, Empowerment, and Perseverance, where I talk to my guests about how they got a PEP in their step, in other words, how they've been empowered throughout their life, and how they have put a PEP in other people's step. In other words, what they have done to empower others. I'm joined today by my good friend, Annalis Mitcho. Annalis is a program support coordinator at American Friends Service Committee. AFC was founded in 1917, the mission of with mission of a just, peaceful, and sustainable world free of violence, inequality, and oppression, and works in the United States and around the world in service of that cause. In Annalis's role, she helps monitor and evaluate AFCS's international programs by managing and synthesizing their planning and database to leverage data for recommendations to the board and senior leadership, capturing and analyzing and disseminating learning from internal and external stakeholders as input for the new strategic plan, and by training staff in participatory data collection methods to self-evaluate their own programs to adapt to changing external influences. Additionally, Annalise developed a gender audit toolkit to understand perceptions of gender and how gender justice materializes within AFSC's international programs. Prior to her time at American Friends Service Committee, Annalise worked at the Boys and Girls Club as a program coordinator. Annalise has a BA in psychology and women's and gender studies from William Patterson's University of her native New Jersey, a master's degree in international peace and conflict resolution from Arcadia University, Go Knights, and a graduate certificate in project monitoring and evaluation from American University, Go Eagles. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Wow, that was like a recap, kind of felt like of the last couple of years of my life. So it's cool to hear you talk about it.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to get into the last couple of years of your life and also think forward about what's coming up next for you. So yeah, as we think about the bio that you read or that I read and the experiences you've been through, can you talk about what sparked your passion in peace building in the beginning?
Yeah. So even before, what you had kind of read in the bio, when I was actually like in middle school, I started working at the Boys and Girls Club. It was kind of like a summer camp situation. I was a counselor in training. It was like one of those jobs you can give to like someone in middle school. But while I was there, working at the Boys and Girls Club, I started to meet people and kind of make some connections. My grandpa was actually also involved with like the local Boys and Girls Club in our county. So, a couple years later, I was in college and I came home, during the summer, and there was a role that opened up as a program coordinator at the Boys and Girls Club summer camp. So this was for a program called the Summer Brain Gain. It was actually like an educational program that they were offering to students from like kindergarten through fifth grade. So, this was during the summer, and the kids, they're at summer camp. So they really were not interested in doing school, during the summer. But there were these studies that were done that showed that like students who didn't do any educational activities over the summer, it actually put them back like 3 to 6 months behind, their classmates who did maybe do some educational activities. So I worked for 2 summers, as a program coordinator for that specific program. And that was kind of like my first experience with the nonprofit world. It was like very local, it was everyone just within the county. But I learned a lot. And then when I knew I, wanted to go to grad school, and I had always worked like really local. So I wanted to see kind of what the broader peace building world was like. I also, it's kind of funny, but I was born in Switzerland, and I had heard about this UN Geneva headquarters. So this is like really far off goal, but I was like, oh, maybe I could get back to Switzerland. It's the things that you think of in your early 20s. And then, it's still a goal somewhere in my mind. But, when I think back on like, why did I get into peace building? I just remember, coming out of undergrad, not really sure what to do. And, starting to kind of start my search. And I really, like you said, I was also a women's and gender studies major. So I wanted to learn more kind of like just about the world and politics and nonprofits and like war and peace. And it was, I just wanted to kind of try to wrap my head around what I was seeing. And so that's kind of how I got here. I hope
Mhm.
that answered the question.
No, it's it. It's a segue to
Yeah.
my next question, which
Mhm.
is that in the coaching work that I do, I help people in organizations identify their passions and their purpose and really make sure that all their things are in alignment. And sometimes when there's like broad work that's to be done, it's hard because there's so many different things pulling you in different directions, and honing in on the one thing that really makes you unique and makes use of your added value, right? So, in coaching terms, it's kind of like somebody finding like their niche, right? And so obviously what you're doing now is going from that story that you just told, where it was kind of expansive goals, into now you're really honing in on monitoring and evaluation. I'm wondering if you can talk about with peace and conflict peace and conflict resolution being very broad. Can you walk me through how you found the niche of like program evaluation and monitoring?
Yeah, definitely. A story comes to mind, and it's funny, I'm talking so much about the Boys and Girls Club, but I have a memory. So that was, like I said, this educational program throughout the summer. And I have this memory of there was a post test that they wanted, me to give the kids after the program. Because this was a pilot program and they were trying to collect data on how it was going. Um, and I remember giving the kids this post test, and they were just like, messing around with their pencils. They were messing around with each other. It kind of looked like a standardized test, like just to kind of visualize what it was, you know. And I remember thinking, like, number one, this isn't working out, but then like there's other ways of trying to like, there were so many cool and good things that came out of this program throughout the summer, and there's got to be a better way of kind of capturing that. So throughout the summer I would take pictures of like, their activities. Or I remember we had like one activity was like clay, so they made different things physically out of clay. So just like taking photos of those and videos of different like activities and presentations, because it was really beautiful and really cool to see like what parts of the lessons actually resonated with them. And like I said, they weren't, you know, initially like really interested or happy, to do this, but it was really cool to see what actually came out of it. So that was kind of what got the gears going in my mind of like, I know that there's other ways to show what's been going on over the summer, and maybe in ways that resonate more. And so that was kind of one piece. And then I also knew about myself, like I do really like to look at data and qualitative data, so looking at surveys and like how people answer them and looking for themes. That's just something that I actually really like doing. And so, um, yeah, when I kind of heard about monitoring evaluation when we were in grad school, and I was like, okay, this kind of sounds like something I'm interested in, or I could get into. And so then, like you said, I did. It was like a certificate program through American University in
Mhm.
project monitoring and evaluation, I think it was called. Um, so through that certificate program, I learned more of like the technical concepts and methods, and things like that. And then, yeah, I applied for an internship. It was like a monitoring evaluation internship at American Friends Service Committee. That was like summer of 2016. And then I applied for a job in 2017 at AFSC. Um, but that was kind of like the journey, like, just first like observing what's going on, but then also thinking about what I know of myself, what I enjoy to do, and what I think I could see myself doing. And so that's kind of how I got into monitoring evaluation.
That's awesome. I mean, I know that there are a lot of people who enjoy lots of things and know that they maybe be able to be doing it, but then to like convert that into like to go from like your childhood, your experience and the local level and into doing your work now is, I think that's awesome that you converted that into like not just like an interest, but like a career and a passion. That's great.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So one of the things that I focus on in my coaching is not just passion. We focus on sort of the three P's, which are passion, purpose, and perseverance. I know you do a lot of monitoring and evaluation. You just work in general with global programming, and then I'm coming to you in the middle of COVID. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about what perseverance looks like for you in terms of challenging times, both personally and also then with your work with your work. So I'm just sort of wondering about, here, as you sort of talk about monitoring and evaluation, right? That's a way of knowing that you're being successful and that people are taking responsibility for success. And also, I imagine that monitoring and evaluation also helps programs implement change when there needs to be adaptation because the data is saying that something needs to be changed or adapted. So can you talk about what perseverances look like for you in the age of COVID and what others at your organization have done to help persevere through these challenging times?
Yeah, a couple things come to mind, and I hope this is kind of what you're looking for. But we had actually, it was like a virtual all staff retreat in August at American Friends Service Committee. Actually, it was just with US based staff now that I'm thinking about it. But, it was a week long of activities that you could plug into for like 2 hours a day. So they were anything from like sharing and kind of just having fun online with each other, to like, they offered like a Zumba class or like a yoga class, just different, a dance class and different workshops like that were, yes, focused on the work that we do, but also about new topics and things like that. So that was something that was like very energizing for me. And I know that we all probably are, I can speak for myself, but experiencing like some level of Zoom fatigue or just, but even with that, we worked, and I can't really say we because I wasn't a part of the planning committee, but they worked really hard on trying to make it feel like we all came together for a retreat for 5 days. And that was just something that, like, when I think of when I hear perseverance, it made me feel energized. It made me feel like we are all together, like we are all going through things, and we can lean on each other, you know, to get through it. And it provided a space, like, I don't know, something I've been thinking about a lot is how necessary it is to have those times, not just outside of work hours, but sometimes also within work hours,
Mhm.
where we can talk to each other as humans. We can, just like build in the self-care. Like, it doesn't always kind of have to be a personal thing on your own. Like, okay, after work, I'm going to go for a walk, or after work, I'm going to go for a run. Those are all really good too, but it just feels like we have to build in these times to really take care of ourselves and take care of each other.
Mhm.
And so I was really grateful for that. And for AFSC has been really good to us, I feel like, throughout this whole time, work from home, but also we actually had like a wellness fund that they put together for, you could apply for X amount of money if you needed, or however way you wanted to use that. It needed to be on something about wellness, whether it was health or mental health or physical health. But I just thought that was really cool. And so I think I'm rambling a little, but is there anything, anything more specific
Yeah,
or,
so I
yeah.
no, that's helpful, and actually it helps from a coaching perspective. It helps me think about like what businesses and clients can be doing to like support. So when you talk about those group retreats, I can plug the fact that some of the services I offer, group retreats and team building, because that is helpful to build that relationship and build that rapport, like institutionalized throughout that culture. Even when things are like normal and you're not in a pandemic, it's like helpful to do that with each
Yeah,
other.
and there's people who, I know that we brought in some people from the outside, there were some some of the activities and workshops were led by AFSC staff,
Mhm.
but sometimes we were bringing, other people in who this is their job, is to really energize people and to just make you feel, together and things like that. So
Mhm.
in those moments, I'm so grateful that I work where I do, or that I've gotten here wherever I am. So
Yeah, on the question of perseverance and sort of adaptability, Annalise, I know that you and I were on the same panel discussion with Arcadia about like peace building in the pandemic. Can you talk a little bit about like from a programmatic standpoint, how how your work has adapted or changed to the unique sort of context that we find ourselves in?
yeah, so a lot of our programs, we're able to pivot to doing more kind of mutual aid. So setting up mutual aid networks within. So I think we have like 28 programs throughout the U.S. All in different cities. So a lot of them, I think, focused on creating different mutual aid networks based off of whatever the community kind of has determined is a need. And that's like the big thing I feel like that I've learned. It's one thing when you're in school and you're learning textbook about peace building and theories and things like that. But like, I feel like working at AFSC, it's you bring it down. It always needs to be about what the community is saying, and what the community needs. And really, we should just be in that support role, providing whatever support that we can, because they have the answers. They know it's their community. They know what's best for them. And so creating mutual aid networks is one, and we have a couple good blogs that I can send to you. And maybe, I don't know if you ever do links, but I know we have this one really good blog on creating a mutual aid network and how, anyone can do it, and just a couple of steps to kind of get started. And then the other piece is, I think they were able to pivot to, more direct kind of like, it feels like more humanitarian work, but like distributing actual like PPE and things like that. So, we have our regularly scheduled kind of peace building work, but then also being able to respond to whatever the needs of the community are. So those are the two things that kind of stick out on my mind right now.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
know that the work that you do must be pretty empowering for the folks that you work with. And as you just spoke about, part of that is also making sure that you're empowering each other, right? And that, my coaching practice is based on empowerment. Is there anything else? So I like to talk to my guests about what empowerment looks like for them. Again, I said my pedagogy was empowering purpose and perseverance and passion. Are there some other ways that you feel like you and your colleagues really work to empower each other?
Yeah, I think I talked a lot about, that retreat and just kind of
Mhm.
building in those spaces. But something else I would say is, yeah, like supporting each other with work and just with other kind of things. So we have developed, a couple of my coworkers who we all kind of work together in our cubicle in the office, but obviously we're not in the office now, but we've formed like a WhatsApp kind of group chat where, at the different peaks of the pandemic and just throughout, we could just check in on each other. So, it's not just the pandemic, obviously, that we were dealing with over the last year. It's all the different kind of crazy things politically that have been going on within the US. And so we had that space outside of work, outside of emails, outside of check-ins, that was like, okay, I need to get this off my chest, or, I want to check in with people. So that's one way, I would say like supporting. Um, and then the other thing that I have felt, and just my own kind of journey, is like um, trusting each other. So when I feel like someone has confidence in me, an example would be like probably when I started and someone said, okay, do you want to lead this next meeting? And maybe in my mind, I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I can. Am I ready? But knowing that someone else trusts me to lead the meeting, or, that's just one very small example, but that helped me build trust in myself. Like I know how to do this. I do know, so just different things like that. But I think so it's like, supporting people to give them enough kind of confidence and the background and whatever preparation I needed. But then when you get to that point, also like giving them trust and giving them, you could say power too, I guess, if you want, but like letting other people lead, who are still on the journey too, So I feel like that in my personal growth, it's been, yeah, because I've been kind of lifted up in some way by like my coworkers who I was working closely with, who were more senior than me. And so, yeah, I think those are the examples I would give.
Very cool. I mean, I know that like trust and like a lack thereof is like one of the biggest like things that can really log jam any organization. Like you can have the smartest people in the world and they might be like overly ambitious and like that gets in the way of the trust or just like all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like what you just talked about is like the perfect sort of power dynamic, right? Because I mean, there are a lot of bosses or organizations that do a lot like have hierarchy and there's like a lot of micromanagement. And that typically, like, even if you have creative people, stops them from being creative because they don't have the trust to like be the best versions of themselves. Like, if they can't be the best versions of themselves, then why do they need to be there?
Yeah. And one other kind of thing I just remembered was I had like a 1 year kind of check-in with my supervisor. Like I had been there for a year, and one thing that was really powerful for me in that meeting was, she asked like, what, obviously we were talking about work tasks and work goals, but then she was like, what are like some of your life goals that you want to do? Like it can be outside of AFSC, but like, what are some other things that you could see yourself doing? And how can we give you the skills here to help you get on that track too? So I just remember really appreciating that and like really valuing that, that there isn't an expectation that I'll be here for forever. It's like, understanding the reality of like, it probably, you probably will go somewhere else. And, how can we give you the skills or give you the opportunity to kind of flex the muscle? I've heard that used a lot, but like, practice these things so that we can get you in that, where you want to go. And so that was another thing, when I'm thinking about, empowering people. And that was something that was, I'll never forget that, because I just thought, wow, that was really cool. And it's not that I wasn't expecting it, but I hadn't considered that as an option to talk about, like my next plan or my 10-year or whatever plan. So
Yeah, a lot of people when they come on, a lot of guests on the show talk about mentoring, and they don't always like necessarily use the word. And some organizations like are very intentional about like integrating mentoring, but sometimes it just happens with those like informal relationships. I know
yeah.
you started off as an intern, so I'm sure that like there's been some level of like mentoring. Can you talk about like the way that relationships are like fostered and formed within American Friends Service community?
Yeah, definitely. So I started as an intern, in 2016. And I think it was supposed to be maybe for like 9 months or a year or something like that. And pretty much, I just kind of got along really pretty well with the people that I was working with. And so when it came time for the end of the internship, they offered, I think they called it like a fellowship. It was kind of supposed to be like maybe a little step up. But I think something that was really helpful for me was like, someone said, I think it was maybe Dr. Cox or someone from our grad school program, like during your time as an intern or as a fellow, there will be times when you you kind of run out of work, or you've accomplished everything that you said that you were going to do, or that you were tasked with. And, that is kind of the time where it is whatever you make it. So, I just remember there was one time where I was like, oh yeah, I finished up what I kind of needed, went back and asked, if there's anything else I could support with. And so I think that mindset though, of like, and it sounds kind of weird to say it, but I wanted to feel like if I wasn't there, it would be, not that I was needed, but that it would be somewhat of a little loss if I wasn't there. I wanted to carve out a space for myself there. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. And so, I think it was just kind of figuring out, I think one big thing too is like understanding how people work and then how you work together with them. How I work with one coworker is not necessarily how I work with another coworker. Our working relationship, it's like understanding how people like to work, how people like to communicate, and figuring out how to kind of gel that, how to gel that relationship and make it kind of work. And one big thing is always like, my thing is always understanding like, okay, I'm leaving a meeting. What is the next steps? What am I personally responsible for? What are, so I always like to leave places with an understanding of what's going to happen next. And so that's something that's just with myself, but
Very cool. Yeah. You're just saying a lot of good things about like organizational culture and relationships and how like organizational culture really determines success, sometimes even more than just like the knowledge base or the human capital is so much can be more important than just like capital. So I appreciate what you're saying about like learning how to interact with people, because like when people can't do that, that's when they call me, because that can be hard.
Sure. So,
so I'm going to switch the conversation a little bit to getting more into sort of the nitty gritty of sort of the programs you work on and like the empowering impact that monitor and evaluation can have, because I know like it can seem abstract to people who aren't like data minded or aren't like into surveys, but it's important work. So I want to talk about how that empowers people that you serve, but with the very ambitious goal that AFSC has in terms of undoing some oppression and creating equity and peace. All those things need to be monitored, and you're the person to do it. So I want to ask about that. As I've talked about, my practice focuses on individual, team, and collective success. And so when I work with clients, I work with identifying goals and ways that they can achieve their goals and how they can respond when those goals can't be attained or it takes longer, there's some kind of challenge to that attainment. So can you walk me through how monitoring and evaluation helps set and measure goals while also setting programs and program teams up for success?
Yeah, I can speak maybe about a couple examples of projects that I've been on. And so I'm going to write this down because I don't want to forget to say it. But so one, we did what's called an internal evaluation of one of our programs. So that means it was like an in-house thing. It was myself and 3 other colleagues who did an internal evaluation of one of our youth programs in El Salvador. And this tool that we used for that, it's called the Most Significant Change tool. And what you're doing is really collecting like that qualitative data, whether it's usually it's through one-on-one interviews, but it's kind of based around this question of like, what has been the most significant change in your life since you started this program? And so that would be the question that we were posing to the program participants who were involved in the AFSC program. But the process by which we did that was we had like a training with our El Salvador program staff, who were running the program, trained them on this tool and how we were going to use it to collect the data. And they, our staff that were in El Salvador were the ones who were doing, everything. They were collecting the data. They were selecting the stories that came out of these interviews of like the most significant change. And they, it was a very much like a collaborative process. So we were kind of there with the tool initially, but really it was about like working together with the team in El Salvador to kind of do this internal evaluation. And I think that is something that I've reflected on about monitoring evaluation, and maybe be a controversial hot topic, but what I and some of my colleagues kind of try to reflect on a lot is like, who are we monitoring and evaluating for? Because a lot of times in this field of monitoring evaluation, it's like more of like a compliance mechanism. Like, you're getting some funds to do this project, and the people who are giving the funds want to know what's going on. And there are other movements. It's not, this is a conversation that we're having within AFSC, but I do think this is hopefully going to stem out kind of to the larger movement, but really trying to make sure that this is not just an extractive process where we're going in, getting information, taking it, reporting back up, but really this should be a process with those who are most involved with the program. So that was really important for us in that specific evaluation, was like, this is not us coming in and telling you what's going right, what's going wrong. This is, we're going to work through this together and kind of support each other through that process. And that was really cool because, again, like just the power of like photos and videos, really, like, so we have a bunch of photos of the team when they were, doing the analysis of the most significant change stories and having the discussion, because part of the process is, you collect the stories of most significant change, and then you all talk about what story resonated with you most, and what do you think, which story tells the most about the impact the program is having, or things like that. So it's really like those conversations are, I think, really helpful. And so that's just kind of something when I think about like reflecting on goals and things, so the program itself had set out, goals for the year, goals for a couple years down the road. So, we addressed all those in the evaluation, but the evaluation really showed us, I think, like pieces of the programming that were actually really resonating with the participants. And because we had that information, they could then kind of tailor the workshops and different things like that based on what really came out of these stories and what really the participants were, were saying what was needed and what was valued for them. And then I would just also kind of add that our team in El Salvador, they were able to take those stories, partner with another local nonprofit, and actually put together, they actually filmed it and got like a little YouTube thing, so it's really cool to see kind of where one thing starts and how it ends. But I think like the main kind of pieces are like trusting that, like I said, kind of in the beginning, like the communities know best what is working well, it's really just about building the space and using the tools to have those conversations. But really, there's there's so much knowledge and wisdom there. And so that was a process that was really meaningful for me and has kind of shaped my understanding of, monitoring evaluation, and maybe where I was a couple years ago when I was in school and learning about it is not really where I am now, but I think that's a good thing. And yeah, I think I'll stop there.
That's perfect. My follow-up was if you had any things from those stories that really resonated for you.
Yeah. There was a young girl who, we didn't have anything in the curriculum around like reproductive health or sexual health or things like that. But, we didn't really come out and say, this is one of our goals is to, increase people's awareness of reproductive health or things like that. But during the workshops, that conversation had come up, and this girl, like, she had said, afterwards in this most significant change process that like, she had never really had a space to talk about things like that. And so that was really meaningful for her. And that really, kind of helped her in her journey. And so that was like something that we hadn't really expected because we weren't really looking for that. And also that the team there who was, facilitating these programs, they did, that wasn't really on their radar either as something that they were trying to do, but that was something that, who knows how long the conversation was, but that one conversation really resonated with that girl, and so that's like kind of the benefit of using I love qualitative tools and just, yeah, trying to figure out what questions to ask to really bring things out in people is something that I feel like you always, keep learning, and keep getting better at. And what I was going to say is like, I'm sure that process, there was things that we could have done better. I'm not saying that we did perfect. Like there's definitely were things that we were like, okay, we can, for the internal evaluation piece of it, we can improve upon this and do this better. So there's always room for, improvement. But I think that was really meaningful to me. Yeah.
Yeah, and your response reminds me of something I wanted to ask you a little bit more about, which is about the gender audit toolkit that you created. Can you just kind of talk
Yeah.
about how that came about and the impact that it's had on the organization?
Yeah. So we have wanted to do what's called a gender audit. Like, so if you think about like a financial audit, that's the only time I've ever heard that word audit. But it's kind of where you take a look at everything from programming to internal policies and how the behavior is like in the workplace and culture and things like that. So just kind of looking at where we're at in terms of gender. A lot of people use gender equality, but I have been using gender justice a lot just because, I was reading a lot in the development of this gender audit toolkit, and that really resonated with me because it's not really about equality. It's about people feeling just, and justice, and so it's more than just equality. So we wanted to kind of put together a toolkit so that we would be able to kind of critically look at ourselves as an organization, and kind of see where we are at, because it has been something, we just put together a strategic plan as an organization as well. And one of our commitments in the strategic plan is to kind of embrace gender justice and feminism and what that looks like within our organization, but also, which is, yes, within our programming, but then also within the workspace with how we work together, things like that. So I see the gender audit toolkit kind of as like the first step in that process of organizationally embracing gender justice and feminism. We haven't rolled it out yet. We're actually just starting to do that like this month and next month. But what we did was looked at, other similar like-minded organizations and the different resources that they had put together, and then kind of created a toolkit for ourselves to use. And so it's going to be like a desk review of our program plans, our policies. So, kind of looking critically at the documentation that we have, but then also having like an organization-wide survey, individual interviews, and kind of discussion groups around gender and work and programming and things like that. And then kind of try to tie it all together into one audit and report. And we see that as like a baseline of looking at, this is where we're at as an organization, and this is where we'd like to be, and what do we need to do to kind of, to get where we want to be. And so that's kind of where we're at. It's been, we've been developing the toolkit for a while, but we're just kind of getting to the rollout phase. So it's pretty exciting, and this is something I'm really interested in, because, and I guess I could just say a little bit about when we're creating programs, in whatever community that we're in, sometimes the gender analysis is something that can get pushed to the back, or we can say like, oh, well, we have 50% men, 50% women in the program, we're good. Like we're, and so it's more than just women showing up to the program. It's how is our programming really impacting their lives? Or, are there different things that are going on within women in the community versus men in the community, or LGBTQ people in the community, and this one kind of strategy might not work for everyone. And so that's the gender analysis piece that I feel like we want to continue to improve on within AFSC. And so I hope that I feel like I'm trying to explain it, but I hope it.
No,
Yeah.
it's I think what's awesome about that is that in organizational coaching and even just like one-on-one coaching, we talk a lot about alignment, right? Alignment is about aligning with what you're good at, aligning with what you want to do, aligning with what you have the capacity to do, but it's also at the very heart, it's alignment with values. And so it's awesome that, being socially justice oriented as an organization, obviously the people who work there are going to be socially justice oriented as well. So not just that you got that your work is saying, hey, I want to be in alignment with my values, but that you actually created a tool to make sure that that's like a measurable thing is in like this a tangible way of knowing if you're being in alignment is a challenge I think the organizations have. So
yeah, and it's kind of, I think, like when we come out of the gender audit, like you said, we'll kind of, I think the goal is that we'll be able to be able to say this is where we're at. This is where we're at, and these are the recommendations that we think need to happen. Like with the other processes that I kind of already explained. So we're going to do this with the international programs. And so the idea is that, each region is going to have a research team that's going to be doing these interviews and the discussion groups. And so it's really about that like collective, it's not just 4 of us or 5 of us, it's like, this is a group effort. And so I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping I'm optimistic about it. I think, we put a lot of time into it, and I think it'll be really good for the organization.
Very cool. Back to some questions about like specific programs and projects that you've worked on. Can you talk about how those projects and programs have empowered the communities that you serve? In other words, can you share some more like success stories?
Yeah. So we have a lot of different individual programs that are doing community-based work. And there's, I feel like I can try to tell some specific stories, but really, I think it's about like I want to use the word ethos, but I'm not sure if that's the right word, but like it's the kind of the way in which we work as an organization. How I understand it is understanding what the need is. And then people use the word accompaniment a lot, but kind of like walking through that challenge, that whatever's going on with people, walking through that with them, and listening deeply and understanding what our role is in that space. And so a lot of it is like community-based work, so what we're doing can be anything from like opening up the building to have a community meeting and providing childcare and snacks and things like that, so that the community can come together and talk about these things. And, we'll facilitate maybe the conversation, but also it can be about bringing together the other groups within the community. So, most of the time you'll have like a Black Lives Matter chapter, different chapters of different, racial justice groups or things like that. Just one kind of example, but bringing people together in the space to kind of, talk through whatever is going on within the community that people feel like need to be addressed. And so I think, it's hard to pinpoint one, but really it's about that process of accompaniment and listening and like walking through whatever struggle is going on with people and supporting in the ways in which we can. And sometimes it's financially, sometimes it's resources, sometimes it's, lifting up people's stories in the media or different things like that. So, it doesn't look like one thing, and it's kind of hard, I feel like, so that's why it's kind of hard to explain, but it's that kind of mindset. Because I think too, working for an INGO, like international non-governmental organization, other people, call it nonprofits, things like that. I have been reading, since I think like graduation, there is interesting things around, the nonprofit industrial complex and things like that. And so I think like it's okay to be critical of systems, of things like that. And it's okay and it's necessary. And I think ultimately it'll help us, get better and be better. So I could snowball into a lot of different directions, but I hope that yeah.
I think
Yeah.
taking a critical lens at yourself and your team and your organization is it's important, and it's important to make sure that is seen as like feedback and constructive ways of being that match that ethos that you spoke of. Awesome.
Definitely. Yeah.
So yeah, my last question is more kind of, I guess, on a personal note. What was one takeaway for Annalis from 2020 and one thing that excites you about 2021?
Yeah. A takeaway from 2020 was like doing whatever I needed to do to get through. Like, and I know that's maybe oversaid, but that's really how I was doing it. Every day it's like we said, there's different, not just the pandemic, but also like just everything that was going on in the world and in the country, politics, so it was knowing when I needed to unplug, knowing when I needed to be informed, knowing when I needed to work out physically, go and go for a walk, or knowing when I needed to rest. So really like just trying to listen to my body and what my body's telling me that I need. And so trying to get more connected into that, because it's like, you can feel like the mind body, it's different, what's going on in your mind is different than your body, but it is, it's so connected. And so that was one thing for 2020, is just like, listen to yourself and what you need in that moment, in that day. And then exciting about 2021, was that the other half?
Yeah.
Okay. Vaccines, number one. Excited about vaccines. But also Georgia, the elections in Georgia were very exciting, and it was an interesting feeling to feel hopeful, about the future. It's been a weird couple years, and so I think those are the two things that a year from, if I look back a year from now or whatever, a year ago, it was hard to see both of those, like it was hard to see the end of the end. Not that was the wrong word, but it was hard to see when there would be any kind of relief, knock on wood, from the pandemic, and also just unclear about what's going on, with our country. So when I think back, those two things are really, exciting. Yeah.
All right. Very cool. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you want to talk about?
No, I mean, maybe I feel like the one thing that I feel like I wanted to work in, but I didn't, is with monitoring and evaluation. It's about successes and challenges, understanding what's working, what's not working. I think as equally as important, like it's not just kind of about knowing that, it's about intentionally building in like points of reflection. So, you know, like starting even from the beginning, like we want to do this. What is our kind of plan? How are we going to know that this change that we seek to happen is going to happen? So kind of thinking about what some of those indicators might be of that change, but then really building in, because it's very hard to build in reflection time when you're in the thick of it, and when you're just going through the day to day, and like it's easy to push things like that off. But I think that's one point that really that's what keeps me I was going to say keeps me coming back to monitoring evaluation, but that's what really I really like that part about it, of, you know, building in that time, whether it's, you know, if you have a year-long program, you know, 6 months in, really intentionally saying, okay, we're gonna take this day or 2 days to just really think about what's working well, what's not working, you know, hear from different people, what's resonating with them, and then, you know, reflecting at the end as well. I think that's one thing that I'm not sure that if that came out earlier, but that's on my mind. Yeah, as we finish here.
All right, very cool. Well, thanks for the work that you do and for thinking deeply about what it means to be a change agent and working with others.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Good, anytime.
Yeah.